$20? That's all she left, Jessica? My brother Nathan's voice echoed through the lawyer's office, his laughter sharp and cruel. I guess we know who the favorite really was. My sister Vanessa joined in, her perfectly manicured nails tapping against the mahogany table as she smirked. Well, at least now we can stop pretending Grandma Eleanor loved us all equally. I sat there in stunned silence, clutching the small inheritance check that felt like a slap across my face. The lawyer, Mr. Harold Blackwood, cleared his throat uncomfortably as my siblings continued their mockery. Around me, the elegant law office of Blackwood and Associates felt suffocating, its dark wood paneling and leather-bound books bearing witness to my humiliation. My name is Jessica Collins. I'm 25 years old. And I had just learned that my beloved grandmother had apparently valued me at exactly $20. While Nathan inherited the family mansion worth $800,000 and Vanessa received the jewelry collection valued at $200,000, I got what amounted to lunch money. Maybe she thought you could buy yourself a personality with that, Nathan continued, his wife Patricia giggling beside him. Or better yet, some self-respect. The words cut deep, because they echoed the same cruel treatment I had endured my entire life. Growing up in Charlotte, North Carolina, I had always been the odd one out in my family. While Nathan excelled in business and Vanessa charmed everyone with her beauty, I was the quiet bookworm who preferred libraries to parties. My parents had died in a car accident when I was 15, leaving Grandma Eleanor as our guardian. For 10 years, she had been my anchor, the one person who seemed to understand me. Or so I thought. This is just embarrassing, Vanessa said, flipping her blonde hair over her shoulder. I mean, what kind of message does this send? $20 for a granddaughter? Mr. Blackwood shifted uncomfortably in his chair, his gray eyes darting between the documents and my tear-filled face. Something about his expression seemed odd, almost guilty, but I was too devastated to process it fully. Nathan leaned back in his leather chair, his expensive suit pristine as always. Well, at least we don't have to worry about Jessica contesting anything. What's she going to fight for, her precious $20? Their laughter filled the room again, and I felt my heart breaking into pieces. Grandma Eleanor had been the only person who truly knew me, who encouraged my dreams of becoming a teacher, who listened to my stories about my students at Pinecrest Elementary. How could she have done this to me? How could the woman who used to call me her little star leave me with such a devastating message? As I stared at the check, a terrible thought crept into my mind. Maybe I really wasn't worth loving after all. The humiliation followed me home to my tiny apartment in the outskirts of Charlotte, where I spent the rest of the evening replaying the scene over and over. My phone buzzed with messages from Nathan and Vanessa, each text more cutting than the last. Hope you can afford dinner with your inheritance, Nathan had written. Vanessa's message was even worse. Maybe Grandma was trying to tell you something about your worth. I had grown up believing that despite everything, Grandma Eleanor saw something special in me. When my parents died, she had stepped in without hesitation, taking 3 grieving children into her sprawling Victorian home on Elm Street. But even then, the favoritism was obvious. Nathan, being the oldest at 32, was groomed to take over the family's textile business, Northspire Textiles. Vanessa, now 28, was lavished with attention for her beauty and social connections. But Grandma Eleanor had always made time for me. We would spend hours in her garden, talking about books and dreams. She encouraged my education, even when Nathan scoffed at my choice to become a teacher. Money isn't everything, my dear Jessica, she used to say. Teaching shapes minds and hearts. That's a legacy worth building. Those words felt like lies now. I remembered the last conversation we had, just 2 weeks before her sudden heart attack. She had seemed different, almost urgent. Jessica, dear, there are things about our family that you need to understand someday. Important things that Nathan and Vanessa don't know. When I asked what she meant, she had simply smiled and said, "All in due time, little star." The phone rang, interrupting my painful memories. It was my best friend Caroline from college. "Jess, I heard about the will reading. Are you okay?" I broke down crying, telling her everything about the $20 and my siblings' cruel laughter. Caroline listened patiently, her voice growing angrier with each detail. "That doesn't sound like your grandmother at all," she said firmly. "The Eleanor I met when I visited always spoke about you with such pride. Remember when you won that teaching award last year? She called me just to brag about you." Her words provided little comfort. The facts were simple. Nathan inherited the mansion and would continue running the family business. Vanessa got the jewelry and would maintain her lifestyle of luxury shopping and charity luncheons. And I got $20, apparently reflecting my true worth in Grandma Eleanor's eyes. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling of my cramped apartment. Teaching supplies scattered around the room I used as a home office. Tomorrow I would have to face my students at Pinecrest Elementary, pretending everything was fine while my world had crumbled. The woman I had loved most in the world had delivered a message that felt like the ultimate betrayal. The next morning brought an unexpected phone call that would change everything. I was grading papers and nursing my third cup of coffee when Mr. Blackwood's voice came through my phone, sounding unusually anxious. "Miss Collins, I need you to come back to my office immediately. There's been a development regarding your grandmother's will." My heart started racing. "What kind of development?" "I'd rather discuss this in person. Can you be here within the hour?" The urgency in his voice scared me, but I agreed to meet him. As I drove back to the law office, my mind raced with possibilities. Had Nathan and Vanessa done something to contest the will? Were they trying to take away even my measly $20? When I arrived, Mr. Blackwood was pacing behind his desk, his usually composed demeanor completely shattered. Papers were scattered across his mahogany desk, and his gray hair looked disheveled, as if he'd been running his hands through it. "Miss Collins, please sit down. I owe you a tremendous apology." My stomach dropped. "What happened?" He picked up a thick manila envelope, his hands trembling slightly. "Yesterday, after you and your siblings left, I was organizing your grandmother's papers when I discovered this hidden in her personal safe deposit box. It's marked, 'For Jessica's eyes only,' and dated just 1 week before her death. The envelope felt heavy in my hands, heavier than $20 had any right to feel. My name was written across the front in Grandma Eleanor's familiar handwriting, along with strict instructions that it should only be opened in Mr. Blackwood's presence. "Your grandmother was very specific about the timing of this," he explained, adjusting his wire-rimmed glasses nervously. "The public will reading was to happen first, followed by this private meeting. She wanted your siblings to reveal their true characters before you learned the truth." My hands shook as I broke the wax seal. Inside was a letter written in Grandma Eleanor's careful script, along with several legal documents that made my head spin. As I read her words, the room seemed to tilt on its axis. "My dearest Jessica," the letter began. "If you're reading this, then you've endured the public humiliation I orchestrated. I know this seems cruel, but I needed you to see Nathan and Vanessa's true nature without any pretense. The $20 was symbolic, my little star, representing the very first money I ever earned as a young woman. It was never about the amount." The letter continued to explain that the real inheritance was far more complex. Hidden trusts, secret investments, and family assets that neither Nathan nor Vanessa knew existed. Grandma Eleanor had been playing a much longer game than any of us realized. Mr. Blackwood watched my face as understanding dawned. "Miss Collins, your grandmother was a remarkably clever woman. She wanted to ensure her true legacy went to the person who would honor it properly." As I continued reading, one phrase stood out above all others. "Everything else is yours, my dear Jessica. Nathan and Vanessa have shown you exactly who they are. Now it's time for them to learn who you really are." The documents in front of me revealed a truth so staggering that I had to read them 3 times before my mind could process what I was seeing. Grandma Eleanor hadn't just left me $20. She had left me everything that truly mattered, hidden behind a web of legal maneuvers that had taken her years to construct. Your grandmother established multiple trust funds starting 20 years ago, Mr. Blackwood explained, spreading the papers across his desk. The mansion your brother inherited? It comes with a massive mortgage and tax burden that will bankrupt him within 2 years. The jewelry your sister received? Mostly convincing replicas. The real pieces are in a safety deposit box registered to you. My head was spinning. But how is that possible? Nathan's been managing the family business for years. Under your grandmother's supervision, yes. But the actual ownership of Northspire Textiles was transferred to a trust in your name 5 years ago. Nathan has been essentially managing your company, though he doesn't know it yet. The letter from Grandma Eleanor explained everything in her precise handwriting. She had watched Nathan grow increasingly arrogant and money-obsessed after college, treating employees poorly and making decisions based solely on profit. Vanessa had become shallow and materialistic, burning through money on designer clothes and luxury vacations without any thought for the future. But you, my little star, the letter continued, remained kind despite how they treated you. You chose a profession that serves others rather than yourself. You've lived modestly and saved your money, never asking me for financial help even when I knew you were struggling. You are the granddaughter I can trust with the family legacy. Mr. Blackwood pulled out another set of documents. There's more, Miss Collins. Your grandmother also owned significant real estate investments across Charlotte, including the building where your school is located. She's been anonymously donating to education charities for decades. All of this now belongs to you, with a total estimated value of $4.2 million. I felt dizzy. $4.2 million. Yesterday, I was a struggling elementary school teacher living paycheck to paycheck, and today I was a millionaire. But the money wasn't what shocked me most. It was the realization that Grandma Eleanor had been testing all of us, watching and waiting to see who we really were when we thought no one was looking. There's one final component, Mr. Blackwood said, his voice growing serious. Your grandmother requested that Nathan and Vanessa be informed of the true situation exactly 48 hours after the initial will reading. She wanted them to have time to show their true colors before learning about their mistake. My phone had been buzzing all morning with messages from my siblings. Nathan had already started making plans to sell the mansion and expand the business. Vanessa was posting pictures on social media of herself, wearing what she thought were priceless family heirlooms. They had no idea they were living in a house of cards that was about to collapse. What happens now? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Now, Miss Collins, you decide what kind of person you want to be. Your grandmother has given you the power to either help your siblings or let them face the consequences of their choices. The mansion comes with a $300,000 mortgage that Nathan can't afford on his salary. Vanessa's jewelry is worth maybe $5,000 total. Without the income from the textile business they think they own, they'll both be in serious financial trouble within months. As I sat there processing this information, I thought about Nathan's cruel laughter and Vanessa's cutting remarks. They had shown me exactly how they felt about me when they thought I was powerless. Now the tables had turned completely, and they had no idea what was coming. That evening, I drove past the family mansion on Elm Street, watching Nathan and Patricia through the large windows as they celebrated their inheritance with expensive wine. They had no idea that the mortgage payments would start coming due next month, or that the property taxes alone would consume most of Nathan's salary from what he thought was his textile company. The cruel irony wasn't lost on me. For years, Nathan had mocked my choice to live in a modest apartment while he enjoyed the luxuries of the family home. He had made jokes about my poor teacher's salary and suggested I should have chosen a more practical career. Now I owned assets worth millions, while he was drowning in debt he didn't even know existed. Vanessa had invited me to lunch the next day, probably planning to gloat about her jewelry inheritance. I accepted, curious to see how far she would push her advantage. We met at Magnolia Bistro, an upscale restaurant in the heart of Charlotte, where Vanessa loved to be seen. "Jessica, darling," she said with fake sweetness, her wrist dripping with what she believed were priceless family diamonds. "I know yesterday was hard for you, but perhaps Grandma Eleanor was trying to teach you about your place in the family." I sipped my coffee calmly, watching her perform. The jewelry she was wearing so proudly was worth less than my monthly rent, but she had no idea. The real family diamonds were sitting in a safety deposit box that only I could access. "You know," Vanessa continued, admiring her reflection in the restaurant window, "Nathan and I were thinking, since you obviously can't afford to visit the family plot to pay respects to Grandma Eleanor, we'd be happy to go on your behalf. For a small fee, of course. Say, $20? She laughed at her own cruel joke. "That's very generous of you," I replied, keeping my voice steady. Inside, I was documenting every word, every sneer, every demonstration of the callousness that Grandma Eleanor had wanted me to witness. Nathan called me that afternoon, his voice full of false concern. "Jessica, I've been thinking about your situation. $20 isn't much to start a new life with. If you need help, maybe I could offer you a job at the textile factory. Nothing fancy, mind you. Maybe packaging or cleaning. Something more suited to your, skill level." The condescension in his voice was breathtaking. He was offering me a minimum wage job at my own company, completely unaware that he was essentially an employee who could be fired at any moment. "I'll think about it," I told him, biting back the urge to reveal the truth right then and there. That night, I met with Mr. Blackwood again to finalize the paperwork. Tomorrow would mark exactly 48 hours since the will reading, which meant it was time for Nathan and Vanessa to learn the truth. But I had been thinking about Grandma Eleanor's final test, and I realized there was one more lesson she wanted me to learn. "Mr. Blackwood," I said as we reviewed the documents, "I want to modify the approach slightly. Instead of just telling them the truth, I want to give them one final chance to show who they really are." He raised an eyebrow. "What did you have in mind?" "I want to call a family meeting. Tell them there's been a complication with the will, that maybe there was an error in the paperwork. See if they'll offer to help me, or if they'll try to protect their own interests." "And if they fail this final test?" I thought about their cruelty, their mocking laughter, their complete lack of empathy for what they thought was my devastating loss. Then they'll learn exactly how much Grandma Eleanor valued loyalty and kindness over greed and pride. The family meeting was set for Saturday morning at Mr. Blackwood's office. I had called Nathan and Vanessa separately, explaining that there might be some issues with the will that needed to be resolved. Both had agreed to come, though Nathan had grumbled about wasting his weekend on Jessica's problems. I arrived early, my stomach churning with nervous energy. Mr. Blackwood had prepared 2 sets of documents, the real ones showing my inheritance, and a fake set suggesting there had been an error that might invalidate parts of the will. We wanted to see how my siblings would react if they thought their inheritances might be at risk. Nathan arrived first, strutting into the office like he owned it. He was already making plans for the mansion, talking about renovations, and possibly converting it into rental properties. "I mean, if there's really a problem with Jessica's $20, that's unfortunate, but we can't let it hold up legitimate business decisions." Vanessa swept in 10 minutes later, wearing what she thought were family emeralds, but were actually costume jewelry worth less than $50. "I hope this won't take long," she said, checking her reflection in her compact mirror. "I have a spa appointment at 2. Mr. Blackwood cleared his throat and began his performance. "Thank you all for coming. I'm afraid there's been a complication regarding the will. It appears there may have been some procedural errors in how the inheritances were documented." Nathan immediately tensed. "What kind of errors?" "The type that could potentially invalidate certain portions of the will," Mr. Blackwood explained carefully. "In the worst-case scenario, the entire estate might need to be redistributed equally among all 3 siblings." The change in the room was immediate and telling. Nathan's face went red with anger, while Vanessa's hand instinctively went to her jewelry as if someone might snatch it away. "That's ridiculous," Nathan snapped. I've already started making business decisions based on my inheritance. You can't just change the rules now. Actually, Mr. Blackwood continued, there's a possibility that if the will is invalidated, everything would be split 3 ways. That would mean Miss Jessica would receive approximately $1.4 million instead of $20. I watched my siblings' faces carefully. This was their moment to show grace, to perhaps express happiness that I might receive a fair share after all. Instead, what I saw was pure, undisguised panic and selfishness. No, absolutely not, Vanessa said, her voice rising. Jessica doesn't deserve anything close to that amount. She didn't put in the work Nathan and I did to earn Grandma's favor. Nathan nodded vigorously. Exactly. If there's really a problem with the will, then we need to fight it properly. Make sure the original intent is preserved. Jessica getting over $1 million would be a complete miscarriage of justice. What if I told you, I said quietly, speaking for the first time since they'd arrived, that I was willing to give up any claim to additional inheritance? That I was happy with just the $20? Both of them looked relieved, but neither offered to share even a small portion of what they thought they'd inherited. Not a single dollar. Not even an acknowledgement that $20 was an insulting amount for a granddaughter who had loved and cared for our grandmother. That would be the right thing to do, Nathan said pompously. It shows you understand your place in the family. Very mature of you, Jessica, Vanessa added with fake approval. Mr. Blackwood looked at me, and I nodded. It was time to end this charade. My siblings had failed their final test so completely that I almost felt sorry for them. Almost. Actually, Mr. Blackwood said, his voice taking on a completely different tone, there is no error in the will. What I've just witnessed is exactly what Eleanor Collins anticipated would happen. He pulled out the real documents, spreading them across the conference table, like a winning poker hand. Miss Jessica Collins, your grandmother left you everything of real value. The mansion Nathan inherited comes with a $300,000 mortgage. The jewelry Vanessa received consists primarily of reproductions. And most importantly, Nathan, you don't own Northspire Textiles. Jessica does. The silence in the room was deafening. Nathan's face went through several shades of red before settling on a sickly pale color. Vanessa's hand flew to her throat, touching the necklace she'd been wearing so proudly. That's impossible, Nathan whispered. Your grandmother spent 5 years transferring assets into trusts designated for Jessica. The real family jewelry, worth approximately $200,000, is in a safety deposit box registered to your sister. The textile company, the investment properties, the charitable foundations. Jessica now controls assets worth over $4 million. Vanessa started hyperventilating. But I've been wearing these pieces to every social event in Charlotte. Everyone knows they're the Collins family jewels. Unfortunately, you've been wearing very convincing fakes. Your grandmother had the real pieces replaced years ago. Nathan slammed his fist on the table. This is fraud. Grandma Eleanor was manipulated. Jessica must have influenced her somehow. Mr. Blackwood's expression turned ice cold. Mr. Collins, your grandmother was of sound mind until the day she died. She documented every decision thoroughly, including her reasons. She wanted to ensure her legacy went to the granddaughter who embodied the values she held dear: kindness, humility, and genuine care for others. I sat quietly, watching my siblings' world crumble around them, feeling a mixture of satisfaction and sadness that it had come to this. The revelation sent Nathan into a fury unlike anything I'd ever seen. He stood up so quickly his chair toppled backward, his face contorted with rage. You manipulative little snake. You knew about this all along, didn't you? Actually, I learned about it yesterday, I said calmly, just like you're learning about it now. Vanessa was frantically pulling off the jewelry, staring at each piece as if she could somehow will them to be real. This can't be happening. I've already promised this necklace to the museum for their charity auction next month. That would be donating fake jewelry to charity, Mr. Blackwood pointed out dryly, which could be considered fraud. Nathan began pacing like a caged animal. The mortgage payments on the mansion start next month. My salary from the textile company barely covers my current expenses. If Jessica owns the company, she could fire me tomorrow. That's an interesting concern, I said, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through my veins. Tell me, Nathan, how would you feel if someone who mocked your worth, called you worthless, and laughed at your pain suddenly controlled your livelihood? His face went white as the implication sank in. Vanessa tried a different approach, suddenly switching to fake tears and sisterly affection. Jessica, sweetheart, we were just playing around yesterday. You know we love you. Family sticks together, right? Like when you suggested I buy a personality with my $20, I asked. Or when you told me Grandma Eleanor was sending me a message about my worth. Mr. Blackwood began organizing the documents. Miss Collins, you now need to decide what to do with your inheritance. You have complete control over the textile company, which means you can choose to retain Nathan as an employee or not. You also own the building your school rents, several apartment complexes, and various investment portfolios. The power dynamic had shifted so completely that the room felt like a different universe than it had just 10 minutes ago. In the months that followed, Nathan struggled desperately to keep up with the mansion's mortgage payments and maintenance costs, eventually losing the house to foreclosure when he couldn't meet the financial obligations. He was forced to take a job at a competing textile company for half his previous salary, his arrogance replaced by the humbling reality of his circumstances. Vanessa discovered that the fake jewelry had damaged her reputation in Charlotte's social circles, and without any real inheritance to fund her lifestyle, she had to move back in with friends and take work as a sales associate at a department store. Both siblings learned too late that their cruelty and greed had cost them everything they thought they valued most. As I sat in Grandma Eleanor's garden on a quiet Sunday evening, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and pink, I reflected on the incredible journey that had brought me here. The woman I had thought rejected me had actually given me the greatest gift possible. The truth about who my siblings really were, and the confidence to know that genuine love and kindness would always triumph over selfishness and cruelty. The revenge had been sweeter than I ever could have imagined, not because of the money or power, but because justice had finally been served in exactly the way Grandma Eleanor had planned all along.